Bathroom 237, and I'm back with another review. Now, this one's kind of random because I wasn't really expecting to watch and or review this. But, uh, one, I was scrolling through Hulu when I saw that this was on there. And two, I was thinking, I haven't really ranted on anything in a while. So when I saw this, I was like, well, that's going to be an easy rant. Because it's a film from 2009, and I saw it back in 2010. And at that time, I hated it, and I didn't remember a thing from it, so I figured I'd still hate it. Uh, but yeah, I really remember not being a fan of this. Couldn't remember why, so I thought, oh, this is going to be easy film to shit on. And which sucks because it is a director I like, and it did feel like it was going to be a return to some familiar ground for this director. That director is Sam Raimi, and the film is Drag Me to Hell. Now, first off, just to get out of the way, yes, this is a PG 13 horror film, which I don't automatically condemn. I know it sounds unappealing at first, but there are some good PG 13 horror films. I mean, just keeping it more recent or since 2000. You got Insidious, which is a PG 13 haunting movie. Two things I generally really don't like. That's very effective and well done. Happy Death Day was actually pretty fun and a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Lights Out, a movie that wasn't as good as Insidious, but I do remember liking it. So, it's not often, but you can get a good PG 13 horror movie. This is not one of them. Now, I don't hate it as much as I did the first time, 12 years ago when I saw it. But there's still not much for me to like in it. Uh, yo. And it sucks because Sam Raimi, I mean, I'm a huge Evil Dead fan. I mean, I don't know if you can see, but I got the Book of the Dead edition of the first film and the second film. I've got some Ash figures. I keep the pop of Ash vs. Evil Dead here with me on the desk. Uh, Big fan of Evil Dead. I've got shirts of Evil Dead. Got a big blanket out on the couch. It's my favorite horror franchise. I love all three films. I love the remake. I love Ash vs. Evil Dead. I love Evil Dead. And Sam Raimi was involved in all of them. Except for the remake, he was a producer. I don't remember how much he had to do with the TV show, but yeah. This is supposedly his return to horror. I mean, going back as far as 87 with Evil Dead 2, so it's been 22 years. Only because, I mean, Army of Darkness has like a horror theme or horror elements. It's an action comedy, or it's a comedy horror with a lot of action. Dark Man is more of an actiony superhero movie. And then for all the 2000s, up until this, he was doing Spider-Man movies, up until 2007. Which apparently, Sam and Ivan Raimi, the brother that's not really in the movies, that's Ted Raimi, but Sam and Ivan Raimi wrote this some number of years before it went into production. I think like 10 years. He tried passing it off to Edgar Wright, which could have been interesting. But he didn't like the idea. He didn't want to do someone else's idea. Plus, he was doing Hot Fuzz. Spider-Man ended, and then he did this. And originally, they wanted to do a morality tale. More like a person that really screws someone over, get damned to hell, and have to overcome it or right their wrongs. Which, in a way, but, well, they kind of do in this film. But it's very downplayed. I guess originally it was going to be more about greed. Whereas in this, I mean, I guess you can look at it that way, but it's very downplayed. I think it could have been more interesting had they gone with the original vision. And, I mean, this movie got some pretty high praise. I don't think it was it wasn't too big of a hit at the box office. $30 million budget, 90.8 million box office, so it was a hit, but not a huge one. But it has a 92 on Rotten Tomatoes, and it was big on IMDb. It did really well at some Scream Awards and Saturn Awards. So, I mean, it was very well received. But, to me, it feels totally uneven. Uh, I know. I'll get into that. So, directed Sam Raimi, written by Sam and Ivan Raimi. Stars Alison Lohman, who I know she was in Matchstick Men with Sam Rockwell and Nicolas Cage. Been a while since I've seen it, but I do remember liking it. Justin Long, Lorna Raver, David Paymer. He's a character actor I'm sure you've seen in something. Uh, Dilip Rao, is that who I'm... Yes. He was the one that did the uh, sleeping agents in Inception. He was the one that drove the van off the bridge in Inception. He plays a psychic or a medium in this. Peter Deming did the cinematography. Christopher Young did the music. And it's a ghost house picture. Which, I wouldn't go as far as saying Ghost House is like Blumhouse. I mean, they're similar, but I think Ghost House has more hits than Blumhouse does, at least for my taste. Uh, let's see. Hellraiser. Okay, he did Hellraiser. Exorcism of Emily Rose. The Grudge. Urban Legend. Species. He did Sinister. Deliver Us from Evil. Pet Cemetery. Which Pet Cemetery was that? Oh, the 2019 one. I love the first Hellraiser score, so Christopher Young did that. But what really chaps my ass the most was the special effects makeup was by Greg Nicotero and Howard Berger. 2/3 of K&B. Arguably one of, if not the greatest special effects team there is. Everything from Day of the Dead with Tom Savini to Evil Dead 2 to all kinds of stuff. I mean, Hills Have Eyes remake was Greg Nicotero solo. But, great special effects team. However, they also hired Bruce Jones, who is a visual effects artist. Because this movie has more CGI, more dated CGI than anything I've seen or can think of on top of my head in quite a fucking while. Excuse me. I mean, stuff that films with smaller budgets have pulled off. There's a scene where this corpse ends up vomiting on someone, and it is the most transparent, clearly CGI effect that I can think of. I mean, the corpse's head is right here, just vomiting on someone's face, and it's just going everywhere, but you can see her, like, looking past it and tell that she's still dry underneath, like it's not even there. And, I mean, some positives, it's fast-paced. I mean, it is like a 90-minute, 99 minutes. Unless you watch the uncut director's cut, which is 9 seconds longer. The only difference is the whole leading up to the cat killing scene is trimmed, but you actually see the motion of her stabbing the cat still off screen. But like instead of going like here kitty for quite a while, and then cutting to her outside like burying the cat, you see her just kind of go up, do some quick stabs off screen, and maybe some blood comes up. That's the only difference. It is fairly paced. There is a lot that goes on very quickly. There's a lot of Sam Raimi type action scenes. I mean, when there's horror stuff going on, there's a lot going on. Uh, the Sam Raimi camera angles that you would come to expect were present, not as much as I would have liked. I noticed it the most when our lead, Christina, played by Alison Lohman, is having dinner at Justin Long's parents' house, which he's her boyfriend. And she hears this noise coming from the kitchen door, and the camera is like tilted like this, and it kind of slowly pulls in, and then we see like the door is at the same angle pulling in. And I'm like, okay, that's a cool Sam Raimi Evil Dead camera angle. Other than that, the only thing that really feels Sam Raimi, and I'm not saying it has to be Evil Dead, because I mean, totally, there's some Evil Dead stuff in it, which normally I would like if this was more of a comedy. I mean, the first Evil Dead was a straightforward horror film. The quote funnier stuff in the first Evil Dead I think can still be creepy, whereas Evil Dead 2 is both funny and scary, I guess. It has both. It's scary stuff done in a goofy way. This you have it's played out very seriously throughout all the film. But then you get these little moments during the scare scenes that is just funny. Or I think is supposed to be, but isn't. So the story is you have Christina. She works at this bank in the loan office. She's known to not make hard choices, but she really wants this assistant manager's promotion. So to prove that she can make tough choices, this elderly woman comes in. And she's an elderly gypsy. She's got haggard nails and teeth, one discolored eye, little old frail woman. She wants an extension on the loan on her house. She's told by her boss it's her choice, and she decides no. Which the woman then starts to beg. She still says no. Security guards have to pull her away, and that's when she says, "You've shamed me." Which actually first, it opens up in like 1967 or 69 in, I think, Spain. Is it Spain or Mexico? Where we see someone going to this gypsy, 1969 Pasadena. This couple brings their kid to this medium or whatever to have their son exorcised, but their son is dragged to hell. And so then we pick up with the story, so catch up to where I was. She goes to leave, she gets in her car, and the old woman's in the back seat. And you have a bit of a struggle, and yeah, there's a lot going on. But first, I will say this movie is like the 2017 It, Stephen King's It, as far as jump scares. This movie is all jump scares. There is really no atmosphere or really creepy scenes. The only thing I saw that I really liked would have been there's a scene where she's in her house and there's this shadow, like a shadow on the wall of this goat figure, this goat man. She hears footsteps coming up the stairs and it's just the shadow on the wall coming up towards her. I'm like, okay, that I like. So there's the struggle in the car, and again, I don't know if it's supposed to be funny. I don't know if it's supposed the seriousness and the comedy in this is so stark that it doesn't feel like Evil Dead 2, where they mesh perfectly. I mean, she grabs like a stapler, hits the old woman a few times in the head or the face, even stapling one eye shut. So even when she does start the car up, to the point where she goes and hits something so that when the old lady hits, the eye opens back up. And I mean, yeah, I would say there's some cool stuff. Like she grabs a ruler, stabs it down the old lady's throat, but then she like coughs and it like sends the ruler out like a friggin' arrow, like right past Christina's face out the window. Of course, it's all CGI. This all started when she gets in the car. She sees a handkerchief floating by her window in CGI, horrible dated CGI. And so like the stapling, the eye, her teeth flying out, the ruler, all CGI. And when her teeth come out, that's when she goes to bite Christina, but she like gets her chin in her mouth, so it's like she's gumming her chin. It looks really silly. But eventually they're outside, and she manages to rip a button off of Christina's jacket. And that's when she pretty much puts this hex on her. But she meets up with Justin Long. They go out to eat. They stop by this psychic. She wants to have her palm read, which this is the character that's played by Dalit Rao from Inception. And it's the typical stuff in these kinds of movies. He reads her hand, he gets a vision of like a demon, and he gets all scared, tells them they have to leave. And basically this curse is she's going to go to hell in 3 days. And it's like this escalating torment. I mean, it starts by hearing things and seeing things. I mean, the next day at work, this one coworker is sitting across from her going like this, but the sound is driving her crazy, and it's the old woman's nails. So she yells at him. Then her boss comes out, and when she looks up, she's got like this just a geyser of a bloody nose going all over him and all over everyone. Which I'm like, okay, that's like an Evil Dead 2 gag. But I don't know if I'm supposed to be scared or laughing right now. Because just the tone of this movie is so jumpy. And of course, her boss, I'm guessing this is why it's supposed to be humorous. He's just like, I get any in my mouth? That's all he says. And she keeps going back to Dilip Rao to figure out what she can do. He mentions like a sacrifice. So she goes to sacrifice her cat. That doesn't work. She goes to give him shit. He's like, it's not a guarantee. You're dealing with a powerful spirit here. She says that she's desperate. He says he needs $10,000. Well, actually, first, before that, I think is in between the cat and her giving shit to him. That's when she has dinner at Justin Long's parents' house. His mother's a bitch. And, you know, she has a bit of a freak out. She sees an eyeball in the cake that she made. She coughs up a fly. They see, like, the raisins in their pie or cake, and they think it's flies. But then Rao tells her, how do you remember his character's name? Jas. Jas says that, you know, if you could come up with $10,000 tomorrow, I can bring you to this woman that specializes in this, but it's going to be a risk to her life. She tries to sell everything she owns, doesn't even come up with half. Justin Long, you know, says, you know, I know it's important to you, so I paid for it. And I've always liked Justin Long. You know, I buy him in serious or dramatic roles. I think he's funny in comedies. Here, he doesn't really have anything to do but talk. I mean, whether it's at his parents' house, whether it's at her house, whether it's at the workplace, because he works at the same bank as she does, but he's very successful. He doesn't really get to do anything. He's just there for dialogue, which is unfortunate. So then they go to see this woman named Sandina, who was the woman from the opening from the 60s. And they find out that this demon is called Lamia, this evil spirit named Lamia, which every time they do that, I mean, even in The Exorcist when it was Pazuzu, or which I guess is a real demon. I don't know about Lamia. Sounds better than a Bagul from Sinister. But the idea is they bring this white goat because they want to pass. They want to exorcise the demon out of her, or have it manifest itself and then go into the goat, then kill it. And this is Sam Raimi, like, like seriously, dude, pick a direction, horror or comedy, or find a way to blend it. We know you can do it. You've gone full cycle with Evil Dead. I mean, straightforward horror, horror comedy, comedy horror. That's Army of Darkness. The and the spirit does go into the goat, but the goat, it starts talking. It starts, I mean, PG-13 versions of like things Reagan would say, and of course it's all CGI and doing all that, saying stupid shit. But then the lady's assistant gets bit by the goat, which means he's now possessed. And I mean, he looks like something from 30 Days a Night or The Descent or something. And there's even a scene. I already said that this was like the new It as far as jump scares. But there's this scene, and yes, the talking goat and this would have been fine if the rest of the tone of the film was consistent. But like the guy that's now possessed, like he's like floating up in the air, like he's an X-Men. There's a part where he does like a backflip, and he lands over the table that has flames, and he starts doing like this step dance with like goofy Hispanic music in the background. But and I was like, yeah, that could have been funny. It did remind me of that scene from It, like the sort of Pennywise hoedown dance. Oh, and that's the scene where it wasn't the wake, because there's a scene much earlier where she goes to the old lady's house to try to make things right and give her house back. But she goes in and it's a wake. And she ends up falling, the body falls on top of her. No, when this assistant gets possessed, lands on top of her, that's when he vomits. And it's all see-through CGI. Like, you can tell there's nothing on her whatsoever. And that's the thing that gripes my ass the most, next to the tone. Actually, this is worse than the uneven tone. Having this serious horror film, pretty much done like a Spider-Man film. It looks like a big budget, special effects, whatever. Not even big budget. It's $30 million. It looks more expensive than it costs, really. But you hire one of, if not the best special effects teams. It's not K and B, it's NB. But still, you hire 2/3 of the best special effects team, and the one thing they do is what, the huge bloody nose, which yeah looked cool. I mean, I'm just a sucker for blood spatter designs anyway, but you can't even get a rig where this possessed guy vomits on your lead. I mean, was it a stuck-up actor's decision or what? But everything has to be CGI, and somehow they're able to complete it. He's able to. Oh, at one point the guy even vomits up the carcass of the cat she killed. I mean, and that looks funny. There's a lot of mouth morphing. I mean, there's even a scene where, is it in the car or where is it? It's somewhere where the old lady goes to punch Christina, or like reach down her throat or something, but of course reaches way down like this, and of course Christina's mouth, like almost like Ash from Army of Darkness when he opens the book and it sucks his face down, and she's kind of really goofy. But they're able to banish the demon. The gypsy dies afterwards, And then the jazz guy puts the cursed button in, uh, puts it in an envelope. He tells her that the curse can be removed if you give this to someone else. So she goes to a diner. She tries to give it to her coworker that was doing this because she finds out that the reason why she lost out on the promotion was because this huge account that she was gonna close went with a different bank, and it just made her look bad. Which that's another. It's not just hallucinations and the sounds. Things in her life just keep going bad. She finds out that he took the paperwork for that loan off her desk and did his own deal through another bank. So she tries to give it to him, and she changes her mind, and then she decides to go dig up the grave of the old lady, and she tries to give her the button. And of course, it's like a climax. She gets stuck in the grave. It's raining, filling up with water. She goes to stuff it down in the mouth, and like sticks it in the mouth of the corpse of the old lady. Is just like, take it, bitch, and then like kicks it shut. Says something like, now goodbye, or something cheesy. Going to get out, this cross falls and hits her. She goes under, but she makes it out. Her and Justin Long plan this big trip, and she's racing to the train station to catch it. He's waiting there. We see that he wants to propose. Now, I will say, this movie was ballsy enough for its ending. I know a lot of people don't like endings like this. And yes, there have been movies, Quarantine is one of them. There's actually quite a bit of movies that put the ending right on the poster and in all the marketing. She gets a phone call from her boss saying the coworker got caught doing what he was doing. So he gives her not only her job back, but also the promotion. She meets him at the train station. They can profess their love to each other. But then Justin Long's like, I found this button, because she buys a new jacket. It's like, oh, well, I found your button, and I thought we could sew it back on. So, of course, scared, she backs up, falls on the tracks. As the trains come in, the ground opens up, flames, and hands pull her under. And then we just see Justin Long's terrified face, because he's a skeptic through the whole movie. And yeah, she does get dragged to hell. So the whole movie's pretty much pointless. And the evil one, she still got dragged to hell, despite all of that. The seance didn't do shit. In fact, the seance didn't do shit anyway, because even afterwards, the jazz guy says the only way you can remove the curse is to give this to someone else. Which they could have just done beforehand. But, so nothing worked. I mean, it didn't have its happy ending. The threat that's been looming over her for almost 100 minutes ended up happening. Which, I mean, I'll give it credit. It had balls to do that. But yeah, it does also just make the whole movie seem pointless. And since there's really... Well, no, I'm not going to say that, but... And kind of dumb because they put it on the poster, the cover, all over the marketing. Yeah, this movie's just not that interesting. She does, before that, admit to Justin Long that it was her decision to cancel the loan. So everything was her fault. I guess that's her coming to terms with like the morality tale. But the thing is, it was a third extension of a loan. She's kind of just doing her job. It's not like she was really doing something hell-bent or something deserving of going to hell. Oh, it's kind of like Thinner, but even the guy in Thinner did something worse than what she did. But, and yeah, it had just way too much CGI, and it was just very much trying to be like this big, exciting, like special effects, like snazzy, cool, actiony kind of film, which to me I did find very interesting. The CGI was very distracting and not appealing looking. It felt they used it for things that it really didn't need it for, like the vomiting. I mean, everything down to the fly that flies around, even that CGI. Characters aren't super interesting. The only one that is would be Justin Long, and he doesn't get to do shit. So I mean, and again, you hire like one of the best special effects teams, and almost all you use is CGI. And the tone is the worst because it feels like this serious horror movie throughout. But every time you have like a scare scene, you throw in this humor, which would have made sense if the whole movie kind of had some humor throughout it. It just makes it stand out more. So totally, it's uneven. It's even light in tone. Like it kind of looks like. I mean, sometimes it looks like it could be like a major Hollywood, almost comedy or whatever. But yeah, totally, it's off. It's uneven. Uh, I mean, there is a lot of cool stuff going on with the camera. Like when there's a lot of actiony stuff going on, there's a lot of cool things. To me, the only thing that really made me go, "There's Sam Raimi," was when she was at his parents' house. It was that angled sort of zoom in. But and yeah, even if there was more humor, I would have found scenes like maybe the gumming of the chin and the ruler, the stapler, the the talking goat in the dance. I might have found more humorous, which then brings me to the very ending. It's ballsy that yeah, she still got sent to hell at the very end despite everything, but then again, it makes the entire movie completely pointless. But I don't know. I guess I didn't hate it as much as I did the first time, but I see why it's just as forgettable as it was the first time. I mean, do I hate this movie? No, I definitely don't hate it as much as I used to. I guess I could. Well, no, that's not true. I don't see how this is a 90 something on Rotten Tomatoes. I really don't. I don't really get the praise for it. I mean, it's not a terrible movie. I mean, there's a lot of. I can tell there's a lot going into it. There's some cool ideas going on. It's just not executed the best way. And yeah, just to me, this is Sam Raimi's return to horror. I think fell flat. And yet, there's even. I mean, there were some reviews on the cover calling this a masterpiece. I would say it's far from that. The best horror film in a decade. Just going back to 1999, 99 to '09, films I would put over this. I mean, the first Saw, Blair Witch for sure, uh, 28 Days Later, Wolf Creek, uh, Hills Have Eyes remake. Um, God, there's a bunch. Dawn of the Dead remake. Uh, yeah, I guess a lot of them are remakes because that's what was coming out at the time. But uh, The Strangers for sure. Again, 28 Days Later, Wolf Creek, Blair Witch definitely. So the best in a decade is an extreme uh, hyperbole. I would even say it's one of the best. I mean, yeah, I could probably, I don't know. I definitely disagree with all the praise, all the reviews. It's not a movie for me. It's what I thought it was going to be, just a PG-13 supernatural demonic curse horror movie. Didn't hate it as much as I used to, but I see why it's just as forgettable, and I'm going to forget it after this. But anyway, thank you for watching.